Well, part of the reason it was unpopular is that the United States did not really get much from it. And a lot of people had expected more, particularly trade concessions with the West Indies, which were very minor. And it did require that the British leave the Northwest Post, but gave them a good deal of time to do that. And so I think the fact that it appeared to many people that Jay had not really accomplished very much. And then there were the rumors coming out of Great Britain while he was there that he had actually deigned to kiss the hand of the Queen. That, in other words, that he was rather a submissive diplomat. Now, I'm not saying that he was, but that was the perception, particularly by Westerners who believed that Jay had, during the Confederation period, had betrayed their interests with the so-called Jay-Gardoki Treaty that was never ratified, that essentially gave up any use of the Mississippi River in return for trade concessions that would help the Northeast. And so they had never been happy about Jay going in the first place. And in fact, there were stories about Kentuckians actually burning him in effigy before they even knew about the treaty. And then, of course, the famous story that he said that he would, once he returned, that he could travel the entire eastern seaboard at night by the light of his own burning effigies. That those people were not predisposed to accept anything that he did. And the fact that he gained so few concessions from the British seemed to reinforce those ideas in a lot of people's minds. But Washington did ultimately decide, after the Senate did barely ratify the treaty, to actually sign it and put it into effect, which for the Jeffersonians, sometimes called the Madisonians at this time, that hurt Washington's popularity in a number of places.
Treaty had a troubled history. It was hard to get it here. The copies of it were lost at sea, and finally one of them made it back. And when it arrived, Randolph, who was then by then Secretary of State, and Jefferson were nonplussed. Washington were nonplussed. They read over this and were quite unhappy with it. It wasn't a very good agreement. And the Northwest Post thing, they had a year to get out of those. And the same people who had told Jay this, that they were going to do this, had told him the same thing in 1783 in Paris when they were negotiating the treaty to end the war. It was as the old saying, deja vu all over again. And then the secrecy surrounding it, they put it under a ban of secrecy when the Senate debated it, which was breached almost immediately and published. The thing was published, but it was published in such a way that it seemed as though it had been sneaked out. When Washington had actually authorized the publication of the treaty, they were just late doing it. So it seemed as though there was some sort of skullduggery going on about it. And then when it was finally signed, that was under the whip of the emerging Randolph controversy, which also sullied it. So there are those who now even say that we would have been at war with Britain had in the absence of the treaty. I don't know. I do know that James Monroe was sent over by Thomas Jefferson to essentially do the same thing as tensions were increasing in 1805 and 1806. And Monroe brought back a treaty that was precisely the same sort of thing that Jay had done, and Jefferson didn't even submit it. He put it in his desk drawer and forgot it. So there was no dealing with these people. They were in what they thought was an existential crisis with first revolutionary and then Napoleonic France. And so they were going to impress seamen, and they were going to interrupt trade, and they were going to declare contraband out of all manner of things that were going to impinge on American commerce, because they could not see that anything other than that was a de facto ally of the French. And so that's how it played out. Neutrality was a myth from the very beginning.